The observation deck of Midnight Station hummed with the quiet efficiency of a place designed for contemplation. Massive transparent steel windows offered an unobstructed view of the Andromeda Nebula, where violet and gold gases swirled in cosmic dances that had captivated visitors for decades. At this late hour, the deck was nearly empty, save for the occasional insomniac or shift worker seeking a moment of peace. Joran Vale pushed his maintenance cart quietly across the polished floor, collecting empty cups and straightening cushions on the viewing benches. At 28, he was older than most station workers in his position, but the job suited him. The peaceful environment, the rotating shift schedule that let him avoid crowds, and the simple satisfaction of keeping things clean and orderly, it was exactly what he needed after walking away from his medical studies 3 years ago. The soft clink of glass against metal caught his attention. Someone had left a half-empty water bottle beside one of the curved viewing benches near the center window. As he approached, he realized the bench wasn't abandoned, someone was lying on it, curled on their side in what looked like considerable discomfort. "Excuse me," Joran said softly, not wanting to startle whoever it was. "Are you all right?" The figure stirred and slowly sat up, and Joran felt his breath catch. She was unlike anyone he'd ever seen, tall and willowy with skin that seemed to shimmer with an inner light, like moonbeams on water. Her hair was a pale silver blue that seemed to move with its own current, and when she turned to look at him, her eyes were the deep purple of distant stars. "I'm fine," she said, though her voice was tight with obvious pain. She tried to stand, but her legs gave way slightly, and she had to brace herself against the bench. Just resting." Joran's medical training, dormant but not forgotten, kicked in immediately. He recognized the signs: muscle cramping, possibly severe electrolyte imbalance, the way she favored her left leg and kept pressing her palm against her lower back. Without thinking, he stepped closer. "Here, don't try to stand yet," he said gently. "I'm Joran. I work maintenance here, but I have some medical training. What's your name?" She looked at him warily, those stunning purple eyes searching his face. "Naya," she said finally. "Naya Soulwind. And I truly am fine, just tired." "Naya," Joran repeated, liking the way her name felt on his tongue. "I can see you're in pain. Those look like muscle cramps. Are you getting enough fluids?" The artificial atmosphere on stations can be dehydrating for some species. "Some species?" Naya's eyebrow arched elegantly. "You assume I'm not human." Joran felt heat rise in his cheeks. Well, your skin has bioluminescent properties, and your bone structure suggests a lighter gravity homeworld. I didn't mean to be presumptuous." Despite her discomfort, Naya smiled, and it was like watching a sunrise. "You're very observant. And correct, I'm Solari. We're from the Kepler 442 system." She winced again as another spasm hit her. Our physiology doesn't always adapt well to standard station environments. "The muscle cramps, how long have you been experiencing them?" Joran asked, his professional instincts fully engaged now. 3 days, Naya admitted reluctantly. "They're getting worse. I've tried the medical bay, but their treatments aren't compatible with Solari biology." Joran nodded. Most station medical facilities were designed for common species, humans, Centaurians, a few others. Less common physiologies often got overlooked. He found himself studying her posture, the way she held herself, identifying the specific muscle groups that were causing her distress. "I might be able to help," he said carefully. "I studied xenobiology and alternative therapies before I left medical school. There are some techniques that work across species lines." Naya's expression grew suspicious. "What kind of techniques?" "Massage therapy, primarily. Trigger point release, facial manipulation. They're based on basic muscle and connective tissue anatomy that's fairly universal among humanoid species." Joran kept his voice professional, clinical. "I'm not trying to. I mean, I'm only offering medical assistance." She studied him for a long moment, and he could see her weighing her options. The pain won. Very well, she said quietly. What do you need me to do? Just lie back down on the bench, if you can. Try to relax. Joran moved around to where he could access her lower back and legs. This might be uncomfortable at first, but it should help. Naya settled back onto the bench, and Joran gently placed his hands on her lower back, feeling for the knots of tension through the soft fabric of her station casual clothing. Her skin felt different through the material, cooler than human skin, with a subtle electrical quality that made his fingertips tingle. He started with light pressure, mapping the areas of greatest tension. Naya gasped as he found a particularly tight spot near her spine. I know, Joran murmured soothingly. Just breathe through it. The tight spots always hurt worst at first. He worked methodically, using techniques he'd learned in his sports medicine rotation. Solari physiology was similar enough to human that the same principles applied: find the trigger points, apply steady pressure, work through the facial restrictions. But there were differences too. Her muscle fibers seemed more delicate, more responsive to touch, and the bioluminescence in her skin grew brighter wherever he applied pressure. Oh, Naya breathed, and her voice held surprise rather than pain. That's actually helping. Good. Your people have incredibly responsive nervous systems, Joran observed, working his way down to her left calf where another major knot had formed. The bioluminescence, does it always respond to stimulus like this? Not always, Naya said, her voice growing softer as the tension began to leave her body. Only to certain types of contact. Healing touch, emotional resonance, that sort of thing. Joran paused for a moment, processing that information. Emotional resonance. My people can sense intent through physical contact, Naya explained. It's why the medical bay couldn't help me, their instruments had no warmth behind them. No caring intention. And I do. The question slipped out before Joran could stop it. Naya turned slightly to look at him, and in the nebula's ethereal light, her skin seemed to glow from within. Yes, she said simply. Very much so. They looked at each other for a moment that stretched longer than it should have, and Joran felt something shift in his chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the station's environmental controls. He cleared his throat and returned his attention to her calf muscle. This knot is particularly stubborn, he said, working his thumbs in small circles. What caused all this tension? Station gravity shouldn't affect Solari this severely. Naya was quiet for so long that Joran thought she might not answer. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I've been avoiding going home. Home to Kepler 442. Home to my family. My responsibilities. She sighed, and the sound carried more weight than someone her apparent age should bear. I've been on this station for 2 weeks, trying to work up the courage to continue my journey. The stress has been, physically manifesting. Joran's hands stilled. That's why you're here alone at this hour. I couldn't sleep. Haven't been sleeping well. I came here to think, and the cramping got so bad I couldn't move. Naya's bioluminescence flickered like a candle in the wind. You must think I'm terribly weak. I think you're scared, Joran said gently, resuming his work on her leg. There's nothing weak about being afraid of things that matter to you. The knot in her calf finally released under his persistent pressure, and Naya's entire body relaxed with a sigh of relief. The glow under her skin steadied and brightened, casting soft light across both of them. Better? Joran asked. Naya sat up slowly, testing her mobility. She stood and took a few experimental steps, her movement fluid and graceful now instead of pained and halting. It's remarkable, she said, turning back to him with wonder in her voice. The pain is completely gone. How did you? The medical bay said Solari physiology was too different from standard humanoid templates. Sometimes the old ways work better than the new ones, Joran said with a slight smile. My grandmother was a massage therapist back on Earth. She taught me that healing isn't just about understanding the body, it's about understanding the person. Your grandmother sounds wise. She was. She used to say that touch could heal more than medicine, if it came from the right place. Joran began gathering his cleaning supplies, suddenly aware of how long he'd been away from his duties. You should probably get some real rest now. The cramps shouldn't return if you stay hydrated and avoid too much stress. Wait, Naya said as he started to move away. I'd like to thank you properly. Perhaps I could buy you a meal. The station has that little cafe on level 7 that stays open all night. Joran paused, his rational mind warring with the unexpected connection he felt to this mysterious woman. I'm still on shift for another 3 hours. I'll wait, Naya said quickly, then seemed to realize how eager she sounded. I mean, if you'd like. I understand if you're tired, or if you have other plans. I don't have other plans, Joran admitted. And I'd like that. Very much. Naya's smile could have powered the station's lighting grid. It's a date, then. I'll see you at the cafe at 0600. It's a date, Joran agreed, and as he watched her walk away, graceful and pain-free now, he wondered what he was getting himself into. But as her bioluminescent form disappeared around the corridor's curve, he found he was looking forward to finding out. The nebula continued its ancient dance outside the observation windows, and for the first time in 3 years, Joran felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The all-night cafe on level 7 was a cozy alcove carved from what had once been storage compartments, its mismatched furniture and warm lighting creating an atmosphere that felt more like someone's living room than a commercial establishment. Joran arrived precisely at 0600, still wearing his maintenance uniform but having managed a quick shower and shave in the staff facilities. Naya was already there, seated at a corner table with 2 steaming cups before her. She'd changed from her casual station wear into something that looked like flowing water made solid, a dress that shifted between silver and deep blue with her movements, complementing her bioluminescent skin perfectly. You look beautiful, Joran said as he approached, then immediately felt heat rise in his cheeks. I mean. Thank you, Naya said with a smile that seemed to light the entire alcove. You look quite handsome yourself. I ordered you something called coffee, the server assured me humans find it invigorating. Joran slid into the seat across from her, inhaling the rich aroma. You've never had coffee? Solari don't typically consume stimulants. We derive energy differently than most species. Naya wrapped her hands around her own cup, something that looked like liquid starlight. But I'm curious about human customs. And I'm curious about yours, Joran admitted, taking a sip of the coffee. It was surprisingly good for station fare. You mentioned yesterday that you were avoiding going home. If you don't mind me asking. Naya's luminescence dimmed slightly. It's complicated. My family has expectations. Arrangements that were made when I was younger. She stared into her cup. I came to the outer systems hoping to find a reason to delay returning. Perhaps find a new path entirely. What kind of arrangements? A bonding ceremony. What you might call marriage. The words came out quietly, reluctantly. To unite 2 prominent Solari houses. Very traditional, very practical, and something I've been dreading for years. Joran felt something cold settle in his stomach. You're engaged. Contracted, Naya corrected. It's not the same thing. There's no emotion involved, no choice. Just political alliance wrapped in ceremony. She looked up at him, and he could see pain in those purple depths. I know how it sounds. I should be grateful for the honor, for the security it provides my family. But I can't stop hoping there might be something more. More like what? Like what I felt last night. The admission hung between them like a bridge neither was sure they should cross. When you touched me, when you healed me. I've never experienced anything like that connection. Solari bonding is supposed to be spiritual, transcendent. But all the politically arranged matches I've witnessed are simply functional. Joran leaned forward, drawn by the vulnerability in her voice. What would happen if you didn't go through with it? My family would be dishonored. The alliance between our houses would collapse. And I would likely be banished from Solari society entirely. Naya's bioluminescence flickered like a candle in the wind. Not exactly appealing alternatives. But you'd be free to choose your own path. Freedom is a luxury not everyone can afford, Naya said with a bitter smile. Especially not the daughter of a Solari noble house. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, each lost in their own thoughts. Joran found himself studying her face, memorizing the delicate patterns that traced her cheekbones, the way her hair seemed to move with its own inner current. Tell me about your family, Naya said suddenly. Are human relationships always based on personal choice? Not always, historically. But mostly, yes. We choose who we love, who we spend our lives with. Joran smiled softly. My parents met in a library. My mother was studying xenobiology, my father was researching ancient Earth literature. They literally bumped into each other reaching for the same book. That sounds wonderfully romantic. It was. They were together 43 years before my father passed. Even at the end, they still held hands while watching old movies. The memory brought warmth to Joran's chest. That's what I always imagined I'd find someday. What happened to your medical studies? Naya asked gently. You mentioned leaving school. Joran's expression darkened. I was studying to be a trauma surgeon. Had a patient, a little girl, maybe 8 years old. Shuttle accident. I worked on her for 6 hours, did everything right, followed every protocol. He stopped, swallowing hard. She died anyway. I couldn't handle the weight of that responsibility anymore. So you came here. So I came here. Where the worst thing that happens is someone spills coffee on the observation deck. Joran managed a weak smile. Not exactly heroic, is it? I think it's brave, Naya said softly. Knowing your limits, choosing a path that brings you peace. Not everyone is strong enough to walk away from others' expectations. Before Joran could respond, a shadow fell across their table. A tall figure in elaborate robes stood beside them, clearly Solari, with the same bioluminescent skin and flowing hair as Naya, but his patterns were more angular, more aggressive. His purple eyes held none of Naya's warmth. Sister, the newcomer said, his voice carrying the weight of authority and barely contained anger. Naya's cup rattled against the table as she set it down with shaking hands. Thane. I wasn't expecting you. Clearly. Thane's gaze shifted to Joran with undisguised contempt. You missed your scheduled departure. Father sent me to collect you. I needed more time. You've had 2 weeks to indulge whatever crisis of duty this represents, Thane interrupted coldly. The Brightstone family grows impatient. Kale has already begun the preliminary bonding preparations. Joran saw Naya flinch at the name, watched her luminescence dim until she was barely glowing at all. He stood slowly, placing himself between the siblings. I don't think we've been introduced, he said calmly. I'm Joran Vale. Thane looked him up and down dismissively. Human maintenance worker, judging by your uniform. I fail to see how your introduction is relevant to family business. It's relevant because Naya is my friend, Joran replied evenly. And friends don't let friends get bullied, regardless of family relationships. The temperature in the cafe seemed to drop several degrees. Thane's bioluminescence flared bright and angry, and other patrons began to notice the commotion. You dare interfere in matters beyond your comprehension. Thane stepped closer, and Joran could see that despite his elegant appearance, the Solari was built like a warrior. My sister's obligations are not subject to the opinions of alien strangers. Thane, please, Naya said, standing as well. Joran helped me when I was in pain. He showed me kindness when no one else would. Kindness? Thane's laugh was harsh. Is that what humans call their mating rituals now? It wasn't like that, Naya protested, but her brother wasn't listening. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Thane demanded, turning back to Joran. "Solari bonding begins with healing touch. By laying hands on my sister, you've initiated a connection that could undermine her contracted union." Joran felt the blood drain from his face. "I was only trying to help with her muscle cramps." Muscle cramps that were likely psychosomatic, her body's rejection of an unwanted bonding approaching, Thane said coldly. "And you, in your ignorance, provided the very connection her spirit was seeking." "That's impossible," Joran said, but even as he spoke, he remembered the way Naya's skin had responded to his touch, the electrical sensation that had passed between them. "Is it?" Thane looked between them, and his expression grew even more grave. "Look at her now, human. Look at how her light responds to your presence." Joran glanced at Naya and felt his breath catch. Her bioluminescence was pulsing gently, the patterns on her skin shifting and flowing like water. More tellingly, the light seemed to reach toward him, as if drawn by some invisible force. "The Solari bonding process is sacred," Thane continued, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "It cannot be undone once begun. You may have destroyed my sister's future with your misguided assistance. I can make my own choices about my future," Naya said suddenly, her voice stronger than before. The light under her skin flared brighter. "And I choose to spend time with someone who sees me as more than a political asset. You choose to bring shame upon our house. To break oaths sworn before you were born." Thane's anger was building, his own luminescence taking on sharp, jagged patterns. "Father will not allow this. Kale will not allow this." "Then perhaps it's time for new traditions," Naya replied, moving to stand beside Joran. As she approached, both their bioluminescent patterns synchronized, pulsing in gentle harmony. The cafe had grown completely silent, all eyes on the unfolding drama. Thane stared at the synchronized light display with what looked like horror. "By the ancient stars," he breathed. "You've actually begun soul bonding with this alien. Is that what this is?" Naya asked, looking down at her glowing skin in wonder. "Soul bonding occurs perhaps once in 1,000 Solari lifetimes," Thane said, his voice hollow. "It cannot be forced, cannot be arranged, cannot be broken. If this is truly what I'm witnessing, then Naya is free to choose her own path," Joran finished, understanding beginning to dawn. Thane was quiet for a long moment, studying the light patterns that continued to pulse between them. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a weight of reluctant acceptance. "This changes everything," he said. "If you have truly soul bonded, then no Solari law or custom can compel her to honor the contracted union. But you must understand, this will bring consequences neither of you can imagine." "What kind of consequences?" Joran asked. "War, potentially. The Brightstone Alliance was meant to prevent conflict between our houses. Without it." Thane shook his head. "And that assumes our father accepts this bonding as legitimate rather than seeing it as an elaborate deception." "How do we prove it's real?" Naya asked. "There are tests. Trials. The elders would need to examine the bond, determine its authenticity." Thane looked directly at Joran. "And you, human, would need to prove yourself worthy of a Solari soul bond. The trials, many do not survive them." Joran felt Naya's hand slip into his, her skin cool and electric against his palm. Their combined luminescence grew even brighter. "What do we need to do?" he asked. Thane studied them both for another long moment, then sighed deeply. "First, you both need to understand what you're truly facing. Soul bonding isn't simply romance, it's a permanent joining of life forces. You will share each other's pain, each other's joy, each other's very essence until death parts you. And if we're willing to accept that?" Naya asked. "Then we return to Kepler 442, Thane said grimly. "And we pray the elders are more open-minded than our father." As if summoned by his words, Joran's comm unit chimed with an incoming message. The sender ID made his blood run cold. "Station Administrator Chen, marked urgent. "I have to take this," he said apologetically, stepping away from the table. Chen's voice was crisp and professional when he answered. "Vale, report to my office immediately. We've received a formal complaint about your conduct with a foreign dignitary." "Sir, I can explain." "Explanations can wait. You're suspended pending investigation. Security will escort you to quarters." The line went dead, leaving Joran staring at his comm unit in shock. When he turned back to the table, Thane was watching him with something that might have been sympathy. "It begins," the Solari said quietly. "Forces are already moving against you both. The question now is whether your bond is strong enough to survive what's coming." Naya squeezed Joran's hand tighter, and their synchronized light pulsed brighter than ever. "Together," she said simply. "Together," Joran agreed. But as station security approached their table, both of them wondered if their newfound connection would be enough to overcome the obstacles that lay ahead. The Solari transport ship Luminous Path was unlike anything Joran had ever seen. Its hull seemed to be crafted from the same bioluminescent material as Solari skin, pulsing with gentle waves of light that matched the heartbeats of its passengers. The interior was all flowing curves and organic shapes, as if the ship had been grown rather than built. 3 days had passed since his suspension from Midnight Station. 3 days of bureaucratic delays, formal hearings, and thinly veiled threats from station administrator Chen about inappropriate contact with foreign nationals. Through it all, Naya had remained by his side, her presence the only thing keeping him anchored as his carefully ordered world fell apart. Now they were traveling toward Kepler 442 at Thane's insistence, racing against time for reasons that no one would fully explain. All Joran knew was that Naya's condition was deteriorating again, worse than before, as if their separation from each other's touch was causing some kind of systemic failure. "Tell me again about the elders," Joran said, sitting beside Naya in what the Solari called a healing chamber. The walls pulsed with the same rhythm as her heartbeat, but the light was growing steadily dimmer. "They are the keepers of our oldest traditions," Naya whispered, her voice barely audible. "Some say they remember the time before our people developed bioluminescence, when we were merely ordinary." She managed a weak smile. "Elder Vesa is the most ancient of them all. If anyone can understand what's happening to us, it would be her." Joran took her hand, and immediately both their patterns synchronized, her light growing stronger. It was becoming more pronounced with each passing hour, she could only maintain her strength when they were in physical contact. "The soul bond is accelerating," Thane observed from across the chamber. He'd been watching them with a mixture of fascination and concern. "In normal circumstances, it develops over months or years. But with you two? What makes us different?" Joran asked. "I have theories," Thane replied carefully. "But they would be better discussed with the elders present." The ship's harmonics shifted, indicating they were dropping out of hyperspace. Through the chamber's transparent walls, Joran caught his first glimpse of the Solari homeworld, a planet that seemed to glow from within, its continents traced with rivers of light that were visible even from orbit. "Beautiful," he breathed. "It responds to the collective consciousness of our people," Naya explained, though the effort of speaking was clearly taxing her. "The planet itself is alive, in a sense. It will know we're here. It will know about our bond." The landing was smooth as silk, the ship settling into what looked like a natural amphitheater surrounded by towering trees whose leaves flickered with inner light. Joran helped Naya to her feet, noting how much weaker she'd become during the journey. "The elders are waiting," Thane announced, checking a device that projected holographic Solari script. "Elder Vesa specifically requested to see you both immediately." They were met at the ship's entrance by a delegation of Solari whose luminescent patterns were more complex and sophisticated than any Joran had seen. At their center stood a figure so ancient and radiant that looking at her was like staring into a gentle star. Elder Vesa was tiny, barely reaching Joran's chest, but her presence filled the entire clearing. Her skin didn't just glow, it seemed to contain entire galaxies of light, swirling patterns that told stories spanning millennia. Her hair was pure white, floating around her head like a cloud of starlight. Naya, child of the Soul Wind House, the elder said, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated through Joran's bones. And Joran Vale, the healer from distant Earth. I have been waiting for you both. Waiting? Joran asked, surprised. For over 200 years, Elder Vesa replied with a smile that held the warmth of 1,000 suns. Since the prophecy first came to me in dreams of light and shadow. She gestured for them to follow her along a path that seemed to appear beneath their feet as they walked, the ground itself responding to her presence with gentle phosphorescence. What prophecy? Naya asked, leaning heavily on Joran's arm. The prophecy of the bridge builder, Vesa said. It spoke of a time when our people would face a choice, remain isolated in our perfection, or reach across the void to touch other souls. The prophecy said that when this time came, a healer would arrive from the young races, one whose touch could awaken possibilities we had forgotten. They entered a grove where the trees formed a natural cathedral, their branches interweaving overhead to create patterns of light and shadow that seemed almost sacred. At the center stood a pool of water that reflected not the sky above, but depths of starlight that seemed to go on forever. The reflecting pool, Vesa explained. It shows truth, past and future intertwined. Look, and see what you truly are. Joran and Naya approached the pool together, their hands still clasped. As they peered into its depths, the starlight swirled and coalesced into images. They saw themselves as they were now, their bioluminescent patterns synchronized and beautiful. But then the image shifted, showing Naya alone, her light fading gradually until she was nothing more than a shadow. The vision changed again, now it was Joran, but his hands glowed with the same inner light as the Solari, reaching out to heal not just Naya but dozens of others. I don't understand, Joran said. The bond between you is not simply romantic, Elder Vesa explained. It is evolutionary. Your species have developed healing abilities that your own people don't recognize. When combined with Solari physiology, the result is transformative. The pool's images shifted once more, showing a great gathering of various alien species, with Joran and Naya at the center, their combined light serving as a beacon that drew beings from across the galaxy. But first, Vesa continued, you must survive the completion of your bond. Naya's deterioration is her body's attempt to synchronize fully with yours. If you cannot learn to channel your healing abilities properly, she will fade entirely. Terror gripped Joran's heart. How do I learn? The same way your people have always learned to heal, Vesa said gently. Through practice, patience, and most importantly, through understanding that true healing comes from love, not technique. She led them to a smaller pool, this one filled with water that glowed softly blue. This is blessed water, charged with the life force of our planet. Naya must enter it, and you must maintain contact with her while opening yourself completely to the healing energy within you. What if I fail? Joran asked. Then you will both die, Vesa said simply. The bond, once begun, cannot be abandoned. You will share each other's fate, whatever it may be. Naya, who had been growing weaker throughout the conversation, squeezed his hand. I'm not afraid, she whispered. Whatever happens, we face it together. Joran helped her into the pool, the warm water immediately responding to her presence with increased luminescence. As she settled into the healing waters, he knelt beside the pool's edge, placing both hands on her shoulders. Close your eyes, Elder Vesa instructed. Feel the connection between you. Not just the surface bond, but the deeper currents that flow beneath. Joran, reach for that part of yourself that knew instinctively how to ease her pain. Naya, open yourself to receive not just his touch, but his essence. Joran let his eyes drift closed and tried to find that place within himself that had responded so naturally to Naya's need. At first, there was nothing but the sound of his own breathing and the gentle lapping of water. Then, gradually, he began to sense something else, a warmth that seemed to originate in his chest and flow down through his arms. Naya gasped softly, and when he opened his eyes, he saw that his hands were glowing with the same bioluminescent energy as her skin. The light flowed from him into her, and her own patterns began to strengthen and stabilize. Yes, Elder Vesa breathed. You see it now. Your people call it empathy, compassion, the healing touch. But it is more than emotion, it is a fundamental force of the universe, the same energy that binds stars together and makes life possible. The glow intensified, and Joran felt something shift inside him, as if a door he'd never known existed had suddenly opened. Through that door flowed not just his own healing energy, but something far greater, the combined life force of every being he'd ever helped, every person he'd touched with kindness, every moment of genuine care he'd offered to another. Naya's deterioration not only stopped but reversed. Her bioluminescence blazed brighter than ever, and when she opened her eyes, they held depths of starlight that matched the reflecting pool. The bond is complete, Elder Vesa announced, her own light pulsing with joy. You are no longer two separate beings, but one soul in two bodies. The prophecy is fulfilled. Joran helped Naya from the pool, both of them glowing so brightly that the entire grove was illuminated. As their feet touched the ground, the planet itself seemed to respond, flowers bloomed instantly along the path, the trees' luminescence grew stronger, and even the air seemed to shimmer with renewed life. What happens now? Naya asked, her voice stronger than it had been in days. Now, Elder Vesa said with a smile that could have lit entire star systems, you return to face those who would deny your bond. But you do not return as the same people who left. You return as something new, a bridge between worlds, a living symbol of what becomes possible when different peoples choose love over fear. As if summoned by her words, Thane appeared at the edge of the grove, his expression grave. Elder Vesa, he said, bowing deeply. Forgive the interruption, but urgent news has arrived from the station. The Brightstone family has filed formal challenge to the soul bond, claiming it was artificially induced. They demand trial by ordeal to prove its authenticity. And our father? Naya asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. Supports the challenge. He's declared that if the bond cannot be proven legitimate through traditional trials, you will be required to honor the original contract regardless of your current condition. Joran felt Naya's distress through their new connection, a sharp pain that cut through his own heart. But along with the pain came something else, a strength that wasn't entirely his own, a determination that belonged to both of them. Then we face the trials, he said simply. Elder Vesa nodded approvingly. The trials will test not just your bond, but your commitment to each other and to the greater purpose you now serve. They will be dangerous, potentially fatal. But they will also be your opportunity to show the galaxy what you've become. When do we begin? Naya asked. Tomorrow, Thane replied. The Brightstone delegation arrives at dawn, along with representatives from 7 other great houses. The trials will be conducted before the full assembly of elders. No pressure, Joran muttered, earning a soft laugh from Naya that sent warmth through their shared connection. There is one more thing, Elder Vesa said, her expression growing serious. The trials will attempt to break your bond by forcing you apart, by testing your individual resolve when you cannot touch, cannot support each other directly. You must learn to maintain your connection across any distance, through any obstacle. How? Joran asked. The same way you've learned everything else, Vesa replied. Through love, through trust, and through faith in what you've become together. As night fell over the Solari homeworld, Joran and Naya stood together in the grove, their combined light the only illumination in the gathering darkness. Tomorrow would bring challenges that could destroy them or elevate them beyond anything they'd imagined. But tonight, they were simply two souls who had found each other across the vast emptiness of space, their love literally lighting up the world around them. Whatever comes, Naya whispered, we face it as one. Always, Joran agreed, and their bond pulsed with the strength of that promise. In the distance, the first transport ships of the great houses began landing, bringing with them those who would judge whether their love was real or merely an elaborate deception. The trials that would determine their fate, and perhaps the fate of two species, were about to begin. But for this moment, in this place where starlight touched the ground and ancient trees sang lullabies of light, they were exactly where they belonged. Together.